I agree with you, and I don't really have such great accounting mind, but I know that I'm not a subject matter expert in that domain, so I need to hire somebody that is, but also has my best interest in mind and is going to be proactive. So when I interview for subject matter experts, I make sure that they have those qualities, right? And then I trust them.
How do you know they have your best interest? How can you tell by their personality?
Well, I check their work for a while, right? And I make sure things are going right, and I check in with my intuition. I do all the things, right? And I interview them, you know, especially if I have had a bad experience before, I become a good questioner.
Behavioral Health Integrations Podcast strives to inspire the next generation of mental health and addiction specialists. Our aim is to continue to raise awareness and encourage collaboration in the mental health and addiction industry so that it will continue to thrive. There are numerous approaches to treating mental health and substance abuse issues. On this show, we take pleasure in showcasing the diversity of these approaches used to improve the lives of others. So without further ado, your host, Jacob Mikke.
What is up, everyone? This is Jacob Mikke, host of the Behavioral Health Integration Podcast. Today, we have two awesome special guests. First, we have returning special guest, Robert Andrews-Mendoza. And then first-time special guest, Mikke Papez. So again, tonight's episode, I know it's really last minute, but really we're going to get into a lot of awesome stuff. I titled it Minnesota LADCs in Private Practice. I think that's pretty good, to the point, because again, we're more sticking with the Minnesota theme, because that's obviously what we're talking about. We're not concerned so much what California's doing, I was doing, because it's just really different. But again, I know we're going to have a lot of fun, a lot of exciting questions being answered. But again, Mikke, you are the first-time guest. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself and what motivated you to get into private practice? And
feels like a long time ago. My very first education endeavor was actually with criminal justice. I wanted to be a probation officer. That was the big dream.
Wow.
And while I was in school, I was like, I should probably really get a job in the field so I can put something on my resume. So I started a job on the overnight shift at the Detox, the Cochrane Detox. Rest in peace that it now shut down and closed, but the Detox did. Started the night shift there. I ended up staying at Cochrane for nearly 10 years. That job in Detox was everything. I loved it. I loved the fields. It really changed the whole trajectory of everything that I did going forward. And I always joke to anybody I talk to about getting into the field. They're like, where should you start? I was like, it should be a requirement that everybody works in Detox. Absolutely. It'll teach you everything you need to know. Really rounded me as a professional. From there, I just kind of changed what I went to school for, finished that degree in criminal justice, went and got my LADC, then proceeded to continue on and got my master's in social work. And right now I am just finishing out my clinical supervision hours and in private practice, doing the thing.
I got to ask you the Detox question. Is it because it's valuable because you see a client at a certain phase of the recovery in a sense, or where they're at mentally and emotionally that's important?
I don't know if I could put it on one thing. I think you'll see the full continuum of every process, whether it's recovery, stud related, mental health related. You see relationship dynamics, rapport building, crisis management, building rapport, de-escalation, looking at addiction from a medical standpoint, because Detox is more in that medical model. I think all of it was just very relevant.
Do you think can I ask a question here? Because this just prompts me because, so for those of you that don't know, I also have a couple side gigs. One of them is being part of the DHS community audit team. And I was at a site yesterday, and one of the this program really truly believes in harm reduction. And I mean, they're in it to win it, right? Mm-hmm. And, they struggle sometimes with some community beliefs about that, right? And And as you're talking about this, I'm thinking, I think you're right. And I'm wondering what you think about this. Do you think that maybe if we as clinicians, maybe especially early in our career or even in our internships, might have a different perspective about harm reduction if we worked in a detox center first or early on, or an expanded awareness of it at least?
Yeah, I don't know if that would really have brought any sort of conclusion to harm reduction specifically, because you're only seeing a client at a very specific stage of that.
Mm-hmm.
In the detox model, you're not seeing those that are successful with harm reduction. Ultimately, they're kind of at their worst in whatever their recovery or addiction process looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if you would really get that lens.
And also, they have different motivations too, because not all of them are trying to get into recovery or be substance free. A lot of them are like, all right, well, that was just a dumb mistake, probably. And again, I've never worked at a detox. I could just imagine what they may be thinking. Oh, it's a one-time mistake. It won't happen again. I'm just going to go through my life like nothing happened.
Yeah. I think there's lots of ways I could think about that. It's interesting. Yeah.
It's a great conversation piece. Yeah.
So, Mikke, when were you officially in private practice? Because I also want to do this thing where we kind of get into our experiences where, obviously, if it weren't for Robert, I would not be where I am today. I've got probably 1 year in officially. I've been in private practice. So how about you, Mikke? Or Mike, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So my business was live just over a year ago. And as far as the work related in private practice, I have been doing that for probably about a year.
So we're in the same boat. Okay. Nice. Robert's the grizzled veteran.
Well, I started when the law was created.
2019, right?
The beginning of COVID. Yeah. And I graduated with my co-occurring disorder degree in 2018. So at the time I was working, this is what happened. I was working I was up in Brainerd, and I was working at a community behavioral health clinic. And let's just say there's some ethical concerns. I'm like the ethics police. We had a disagreement, and I left, and I went to a private clinic, a mental health clinic that was small, that I was going to do my mental health internship at. I had my LADC, and at the time, that's when the law was created that LADCs could go into private practice. But DHS hadn't published the guidance yet. I mean, it was just brand spanking new, right? And so there was nobody that could give me any guidance. So we didn't understand that you had to be in solo private practice. And so that was how the Facebook group solo LADCs and solo private practice, that wording came about. And so the insurance companies didn't understand it either, the Medicaid payers. So they credentialed me onto the group contract with the mental health clinic. And so I started working as an LADC there, billing that way. And that went on for a while, and I was just getting a percentage. So I think the clinic got 40%, and I got the 60% of the claims, making way more money than I was at the community health clinic versus the hourly wage. It was fantastic for me. I'm sitting in Mexico with my partner on vacation, get a call, and the office manager's on the line with DHS. Basically telling me that's not how the law was intended. And, they understood because
boundary issues. You're on vacation, right?
Right. Well,
boundaries. It
was an immediate issue, right? And they understood because they hadn't published the guidance yet, and it was still a new law, but I had to stop seeing people like that day. So ethically, obviously that same day I called the Secretary of State from Mexico and started my Soul Savvy. And then the next issue was ethically, what do I do with my clients? Because there was nobody else in the clinic that could see them for what I was seeing them for, not, the licensures weren't right or whatever. So I just ended up taking them with me because there's nobody else that could see them. And then I think it took about 6 months. I continued their care under my new business while I was waiting, doing all this stuff, right? Enrolling with Medicaid, waiting for contracts. So I did that pro bono for 6 months on unemployment. And it ended up working out. But yeah, that was a tough transition. And it all worked out in the end. It just took a long time because the pieces weren't in place yet with the guidance. Even DHS struggled at times giving me answers. I had to talk to people that created the law. I had to talk to some of the managers at Blue Cross Blue Shield. It was lawyers, you name it. Yeah. It was a tough thing. So that's why I know so much about the intricacies about how to do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's how that came about.
Well, it's funny, like when we're talking about like policies and ethics and whatnot, Mike, I know we've talked a few times just like collaborating on some stuff, and you would have questions and you would ask me, and I'm like, okay, well, Mike, I do A, B, and C, and you'd be like, how are you doing that? That doesn't make any sense. And a lot of the times I couldn't really give you a good answer, but it's like, I don't know. I'm doing it. I'm getting paid. No one's telling me to stop. So I don't know. So I just keep going. So I still think it's the wild, wild west, you know, Robert. Maybe not as bad as it was 4 years ago, but I mean, am I wrong there in a sense?
I think there's not that many of us still. I mean, it is a steep learning curve. And when I say steep learning curve, I just think there's not a lot of us. So there's not a whole lot of us that we can kind of like lean on each other so much, right? That's why the Facebook group and that. And
what are you saying, all of us? Are you saying LADCs and private
like
practice,
you, me,
that population?
Yeah, right? That have gone.
Which is crazy to think about. It's crazy.
I thought by now that there'd be a ton of us, right? But there's not. And I think that it's been, you know, I kind of been taking this measure, you know, because people do reach out to me to consult because I do that. And the common themes and because I track patterns, the common denominators are basically, it just seems like a lot of effort to get started. And they seem to get overwhelmed right away when they realize, you know, how much paperwork there is. And I don't think it's actually that much if you just take it slow and go step by step by step. What's difficult, I think, is the wait periods and the transition, right? How do you balance work and then starting up a caseload? And most importantly, do you have a referral source? Do you have referral sources that can keep you busy, right? You got to have that. So if you don't have those relationships in the community to bring you clients, then you're not going to really do too well. So you might not want to quit your day job.
Right.
Micah, you want to add to that?
Well, my first thought was I wanted to ask, do you, Robert, know how many are there? How many of us are there?
I don't. I mean, the ones I'm aware of, I think I count about 8 that I'm aware of.
No.
Right? That I'm aware of. I'm sure there's more, but also, like, I feel like it's so hard to know because there's no, as far as I know, there's no database or anyone keeping tracks at the state or MDH or that's public information where I can go, oh, can I have this spreadsheet, right? That'd be great. And we don't have like an official organization that we should, that represents us with legislative matters, right? That's another missing part, which really we need because we get left out on legislative changes. So I don't know. I wish I knew. It would be helpful.
And that number that you're throwing out there, that includes private pay as well as those that are taking.
No, I'm just talking about those of us that are enrolled with Medicaid. I think private pay, there's a lot more than that, for sure. I think there's a ton probably. Because I think that there are people that do private pay that just do it on the side, or maybe that are retired and do some of the assessment or whatever. Sure, I think there's quite a few of those kind of people, but they tend to not be, you know, stick their head out so much, I think, for whatever reason. And they don't want to deal with insurance, and I don't blame them. It's a lot, right? I mean, Yeah, I mean, anybody with an LADC,
Horrible.
can hang a shingle, and if they're registered with the board, and it doesn't take that much to take cash, and provide some services. But in order to be a Medicaid eligible provider, you have to meet criteria, right? Got to have over 6,000 hours, documented, provable. You have to go through the whole enrollment process, and you have to be a solo practice, right? So it's a lot more stringent, and you're limited to Medicaid products. So all the PMAPs, MA, behavioral health funding, Ryan White funding, and the commercial insurance don't work for us, with the exception of if you're dually licensed, then the psychotherapy codes, that's different, right? You could bill psychotherapy under commercial plans, just not SUD codes. Hopefully the insurance companies change this. Now, what's interesting is, and Jacob even got a notice too, I've seen language on the federal level from Medicare that we're supposed to be part of some of these sweeping changes that are supposed to allow us to take Medicare next year. And I pushed back on that because Medicare denied my request, and I submitted some of that language from the insurance carrier, and Medicare basically claimed that was a mistake by the insurance carrier. But I was in my provider portal the other day for Health Partners, and they have it in there ready to go for the first of the year. So I'm really confused now.
Because right now you gotta be a licensed mental health professional.
Well, it was for SUDS. It was not for mental health. So that's why I'm really confused now, and I'm pushing back again to gain clarity. I'm working with DHS. I'm working with Medicare again, not Medicaid, Medicare, on the federal level to try to gain clarity. And when I have that, I'll post that information. I think that there's a lot of confusion. This is typical for us LADCs in private practice. Nobody really understands what's going on with us a lot of the time because there's so few of us. We're just not in their consciousness most of the time, right? So when we run into issues, it's almost like you have to educate them on who we even are. And then they have to go back and look at the statute. And I just ran into this provider enrollment the other day. Provider enrollment. And it took me 2 months to get my addresses changed. So that's a little frustrating at times, but it also means we got to stay on top of our stuff, right? We got to keep nudging them at times, and know, like, when you get that person at provider enrollment that helped you with that one thing, like, don't lose that email, don't lose that phone number.
Yeah,
good notes of how they helped you. Yeah, that's my advice.
100%. I mean, and I think that's been a huge saving grace of just, the group in general to be able to lean on each other. Like, it took me almost a year to get my contract with UCare for just what you're talking about.
Yes.
I still haven't gotten them yet.
Say why.
I had put so much work into going above them, contacting DHS, playing this merry-go-round game until I finally got a person that was able to help. And so that just goes to, really capitalize on what you're talking about, where we're all talking to different people in these organizations and getting completely different answers. Yeah. And having to rely on each other. I think I've had conversations with both of you, like, hey, who have you talked to from this organization? Do you have a contact, someone that knows about us?
Yeah.
I've had billers try to help me get UCare, and they keep making mistakes, or there's so many barriers where I think, Robert, I talked to you about this, where for the longest time, they wouldn't accept me and they wouldn't really give me a good reason why, till I finally figured out, oh, well, you're just telehealth. UCare doesn't take anymore, just telehealth providers. You got to be in person as well. And it took them forever just to tell me that. So then again, now I'm working with a billing company who's been trying to get me through, and I'm still not UCare. And it's just an absolutely ridiculous process. And they want to know why we want to say F it to insurance companies. That experience right there.
Yeah, well, you're not guaranteed a contract when you apply. We can give you some tips on how to give it your best shot, right?
Your niche, right? You need a niche that helps you.
Unless you're rural Minnesota.
Yeah.
There is a law that
Hmm.
stipulates that if you're rural, they're supposed to give it to you. That's an exception. So, I mean, if you're rural Minnesota, you should not have a problem. Now, you care. Let's just say this out loud because this could save
Let's
somebody.
do it. Loud and proud.
You care. So, and it was the same for both of us. This was the issue. You care. Did not. So what happened is they didn't understand, or at least the people in the call centers or whoever does the initial processing of the tax form, that it was the S Corp status, right? The S Corp status.
Yeah.
They were trying to say we had to be a licensed program, type 2 program, in order to be S Corp status. That is complete baloney. And it took a long time to get the name of the person at UCare that could override that, thinking, right? And we both got that name. And then once we had that name, it was resolved. But it holds up, seeing those clients for a year or getting those claims paid. So we should post that person's name later after the show. And it's absolutely ridiculous. So S Corps you can be an S Corp. And I wasn't an S Corp the first couple of years. And what had ended up happening is I chose an accountant in the city that they were more reactive than proactive. So they weren't really looking out for my best interests. And I didn't understand that just being a single member LLC was not in my best interest, considering how much money I was making. So I ended up paying $30,000 2 years ago in taxes than I would have had to have paid if I was an S Corp. I'm still paying that back because it was such a huge amount. And I had a feeling that whole year that something was wrong with that accountant. Like I had that feeling. Yeah. And then when I switched accountants, they're the ones that brought it to my attention. Thank God I did that at the time because they're the ones that then changed my status.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So really important when you're setting out to begin this journey, having a really good accountant. Even if you don't retain them to do your books, do a consult to discuss tax strategy. At a certain dollar point in your income, it makes total sense to reevaluate your tax status.
Well, what's the difference between an S Corp and an LLC? And I also heard you mention something about salary, where if you make a good amount of money, you'd benefit more from an S Corp due to taxes, right? I think some people in private practice just naturally have a better business mind. Like Robert, you have a very good financial business mind. I don't. That's why I've been really stubborn with my billing companies, because I don't want to learn anything about billing. I want to document, just hit enter, document therapy. That's all I want to focus on. And what I'm realizing now is like, no, Jake, you're going to have to learn a little bit about billing and accounting. But I'm stubborn because I don't want to. I want to pay people to do that crap for me. And
right.
I don't know. Anyways, I'm rambling on too much. But.
Well, I agree with you. And I don't really have such great accounting mind, but I know that I'm not a subject matter expert in that domain. So I need to hire somebody that is, but also has my best interest in mind, is going to be proactive. So when I interview for subject matter experts, I make sure that they have those qualities, right? And then I trust them.
How do you know they have your best interest? How can you tell by their personality?
Well, I check their work for a while, right? And I make sure things are going right, and I check in with my intuition. I do all the things, right? And I interview them, especially if I have had a bad experience before. I'm a good questioner. I become a good questioner. So what was I going to say? What were we talking about? We were talking about, so this is the difference, basically. So once you, so what a good accountant will do is they're going to give you, it's a standard process. There's like this quiz they give you every year based on your industry and the type of job you have. The IRS determines the questions, and it's this formula they use to determine how much on average you're supposed to make for the type of job you have. That's the salary amount then from that formulation that you would typically be taxed in if you were to get a W-2 job in that field, right, on average. So that number then would be what they would take if you were an S corp. And so if you were to be an S corp, that number they come up with is they would tax you the normal like W-2 LLC, single member LLC tax bracket up to that number, right? So it's like $60,000 or something like that for where I am. You exceed that $60,000, everything over that is not taxed. The accounting then distributes it as corporate dividends throughout the year as non-taxable, right? That's the advantage. So basically up to $60,000 throughout the year is taxed normally, and then everything over that's not taxed. So if you're making $120,000, only 60,000 of that is taxed, the rest is not. Wow. So when I was a single member LLC, that first year I made $120,000. I was being full taxed on that whole $120,000. And that's why I say I got screwed with $30,000 extra dollars and I didn't know it. But if you're only making $60,000 or less a year, then it doesn't make sense to go S corp, right? Yeah. So that's what I mean by once you start exceeding that $60,000 bracket you need to talk to an accountant about your tax strategy, because it doesn't make any dang sense to stay a single member LLC and not be an S corp when you start exceeding that number. Why would you give away free money to the government? Doesn't make sense. And then UCARES, as far as I know, was the only payer that didn't seem to understand. So far. So yeah.
Mike, Actually, Mike, I was going to ask you, like, when you did private practice, did you go into private practice full time, or did you still have like a part-time job on the side?
So I dove in full time. However, I focused on like having other income streams while I built. So even though like I was full time, I had a focus on making sure I had like some side gigs while I quote unquote built. But I did, while it's still on my mind, I did want to comment about, the importance of in this journey, understanding different personalities. Jacob, like you're saying, I don't want to know anything about this. Yes. And I also think it's important to keep in mind that we are our own advocate within what we're doing, our roles, our business, and having some sort of guidance or knowledge to be informed enough to be able to collaborate with these providers or these other services is super important. And I'm a why person. So that's why like when we talk and I'm like, but why? That doesn't make sense to me. I have to understand it. And so I think that there is this key importance of there's going to be barriers. There's going to be struggles along the way, as with anything. But there's also, I think, a really important piece of that to being informed. Having enough to understand enough to make informed decisions so you can be successful.
A lot of people don't understand what LADC in private practice is. And occasionally I get even probation officers who try to push clients in a different direction. I had that happen last week.
Really?
I had to work a client who... Yes, let's just say, I don't want to say too much. Let's just say I had to go to battle with the courts. And it was all, well, we've never heard of that organization and we've never heard of this person. And where do you find these people? And to the client, right? And it just enraged me like you wouldn't believe. So I ended up diplomatically sending this long letter about who we are, what the requirements are to even be enrolled, making sure she understood that actually we far exceed, credential wise, education wise, this person's in good hands. Yeah. Actually, the client's probably going to we're going to be able to do the deeper work, right? We're going to be able to get the trauma work. And they've cycled through 10 treatment programs that you're attempting to send them through again. Right. So I'm not quite sure where the disconnect is here. But right. And you find yourself sometimes in that position. So you have to find a way to and be willing to have those discussions. And that's kind of why I wish we had more of a bigger group, right? So that our voice was a little louder. So that happens sometimes too. And then you also make really strong connections in the community too, because once they get what you're doing, they become really strong advocates for you. You know, sometimes they become your referral sources too, which can become really steady.
Can I add to that? Just what we talked about earlier about just like needing those referral streams. Like, I have no shame to say, like, Robert is like 95% of my. What I'm trying to say is Robert hooked me up with other people in the field. And I'm sure I don't know, Micah, what your referral sources are. It's weird. It's like a trickle down effect where they refer you to people, and then I get referred to, let's say, Brian, and then from Hennepin Health, and then HPSP, and they get a hold of other attorneys, and other attorneys work with you for assessments. It's a trickle down effect, which is really good.
Yes. Some of these.
Don't burn bridges too, by the way. Don't burn bridges.
Don't burn.
Try
bridges.
not to.
Don't. So there's always going to be those clients, especially from referral sources, especially from county sources, where they're struggling because they keep cycling through the treatment programs. That's your opportunity. That's really where I find our opportunity is, because first of all, the client's going to have the same provider through, right? They're not going to go through 3 different providers, because it happens sometimes. If you're dually licensed, you're going to be able to do the mental health component too. That's something that's important, right? And that might benefit them too. I find a lot of times, like sometimes if they're repeating through treatment centers, you have to look at it closely and make sure that were we not touching on mental health enough, right? Are we not getting to the root issues if there's PTSD or if there's something deeper there, right? We need to make sure if we're able to address that, right? That's an area where we can really shine. And kind of like, that's a really kind of, I hate to say marketing, but marketable thing, right? And, you know, show up that way and people notice. And then they're always looking for people like that can kind of take those cases that they keep struggling with, that they just kind of stay on their caseload forever because they just keep coming back over and over and over again. We can offer something different. Now, I know, like, I tend to keep clients like 6 to 12 months in that because they are so traumatized and they are so broken by the time they get to me. But it takes that long. Especially if there's personality disorders involved, dissociative disorders. I probably diagnose chronic PTSD 80% of the time, right? 90 days isn't going to do it, guys.
Well, AWOL too. A lot of them just go AWOL for no reason. And the important thing is, like, not to judge them for that, but I guess hope that they come back, which a lot of times they do. If you have that powerful connection, they will come back eventually.
Yeah, I'm finding that to be less and less. They always start off with, I don't want to do this. I'm mad I have to do it. But if you're doing it right, they start showing up early, or they when they get close to discharge, they don't want to go. And then you have to therapeutically get them ready for that, right? Because it's important they do. Yep. So we do offer something unique. We do. You just got to market yourself right. And it'll catch on. And yes, it's also important, like, there's plenty of clients. There always will be.
Yes.
And if you just make sure that you're communicating and you're not burning bridges, you're communicating and you're highlighting your differences and how you can kind of fill in those gaps that are needed, you'll stay busy. And yes, I do. It doesn't hurt to, like, make people aware of you guys too, right?
Yeah. No, Robert, Brian has been a huge lifesaver. The last 3 clients he had for me were UCare, and I couldn't take them. Stinger. But Micah, were you gonna say something? I think you were trying to chime in.
Oh, I was just gonna really just piggyback on the benefit of the single provider relationship. I know in my experience being in programs how many times I heard that same, downfall from clients, like, oh, my counselor's changing again. I have to open up and tell my story again. I have to go, I have to get this service from this person and this one from this person. And it just becomes this, wash and repeat cycle that really is doing the client a disservice. And how does that set them up to be successful in building a relationship and building rapport? And a lot of times just kind of keeps them re-traumatized. And so I think that really is a true benefit that we have to be the one provider and also be the one that's communicating, like, with collateral involvement. There's no getting different feedback or different variations of terminology, or this person said this and this person said that. And I mean, so there are a lot of those benefits for a specific population that we serve that I think are crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other that brings up, like, I was talking to a program a couple weeks ago about this. If you're going to keep clients longer than what, like, CPS is used to, because they tend to have a timeline, right? And they tend to, you say 6 to 12 months, and they go, right?
Well, it depends how well the client's doing too. And
what I usually do is, once I get the symptomology down enough, right, and restore functioning enough, that satisfies whatever requirements that CPS is looking for, then I'll discharge them. I'll do a discharge to satisfy CPS, right? And I'll always communicate and be transparent about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. But I'll write it in a way that satisfies their requirements, and then I'll reopen another, I'll update the assessment, reopen another treatment plan, and put them on, like, a maintenance plan, and then continue the care, right? Mm-hmm. So there's always a way to work with these collateral sources in a way to navigate, I hate to say, it would be, in a perfect world, they would just do it our way. Right? To recognize the trauma and work with the trauma as long as we need. But it's not gonna, we can't change a group consciousness that's much bigger than us, right? It's better just to adapt and be transparent and just adapt. And we can adapt. We have the tools to adapt. We can do that, right? Ethically. So just think about ways to, like, navigate it like that. You'll be fine.
I kind of want to get into a new brief segment. Mikke, I want to piggyback off of something you said about how traumatic it could be, especially in the treatment center setting. I think we've all worked at treatment centers, right?
Oh, yeah.
To an extent. And there's a lot of turnover, especially with counselors. And again, that counselor leaving, especially over a short period of time, is traumatic. It's abandonment. But again, that's not necessarily, like, the counselor's fault. It's more of a systemic issue. And I know a lot of the reasons why people leave treatment center, like, settings or community mental health to go into private practice is to, again, avoid those toxic issues at work. Speaking treatment centers, we can go one at a time. Like, Mikke, were there, like, obviously you have benefits going into private practice yourself. Was there anything that you disliked working at treatment centers that really, I don't know, made you happy being alone in private practice in a sense?
I think this is a whole conversation. There are benefits to both, and I think that there are drawbacks to both. And I think that really is a very individual journey. And I think that same applies to the client too. Yeah. I loved being a part of a team. I really enjoyed leadership. I loved that. I loved being a part of leadership where I could teach and build a team and problem solve. Like, those are all things that I really, really enjoyed. And I think one of the biggest benefits for me in this journey is in this private practice role, I'm allowed the ability to do it all. I can still have client time, client interactions, one-on-one client time, provide client care. And then I can do a whole bunch of other things where I can be a part of a team or be a part of DHS's, like, community of practice, where I can still feel as though I'm contributing to the overall field and change as a whole. And, and then can still have, side consulting practices where I'm more in the field that want, more of that supervision and guidance and insight. And
I agree. I'm doing similar things. I do, I'm doing some side. I've always done some consulting, and now I'm doing some vision on the side too. So there are ways to stay involved in our community, right? And still get that networking and that camaraderie and, staying engaged with our fellow colleagues, right? Because that's important. I didn't do that at first, and I found myself isolating a lot.
Were you lonely?
Yes, after a while I was, especially since I'm only telehealth. And it took me a while to realize I was. But, I did the behavioral modification and I got myself out there and I feel a lot better. So in the end, I think that she's absolutely right. Like, it enables you to kind of create your own thing, right? Which is gives you a lot more freedom. Okay, I was just kind of like continuing on where you left off. I'm totally agreeing and validating everything you said, but now you can go.
No shit talking.
Go ahead and take back off again.
I'm not sure where I left off, but I think the last thing I said was, before I realized I was kicked off, was not being siloed, just being able to really understand myself as a professional.
You say siloed? What'd you say?
Siloed.
Silo. Okay, that's a new one.
And highlight the skills that I have and the things that I enjoy doing, and really run with them and use those to benefit not only myself, but the community.
Can okay, maybe this could be into something too. Like, I'm a year in, and yes, there obviously is definitely that lonely piece to it. I mostly do one-on-ones. I tried doing groups for a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, I miss the treatment center setting when it comes to just talking to other people. Doing groups, I miss doing groups in person a lot, and I miss the person-to-person interaction. Even though I do have a couple clients that are person-to-person, it's not the same. But going back to the struggle, and I don't know if you two can relate, there's just I'm embarrassed, almost kind of embarrassed to say, like, I never lasted more than 2.5 years at any place I worked at in the behavioral health field, and I'll take some ownership. I mean, I'm not perfect, and there's always conflicts, and there always seems to be like toxic behavior among staff that just make it unbearable to like work there anymore. And so it's a love-hate. It's just like, I miss the treatment center group type setting, but I know I can't stay there long. But at the same time, now I'm in private practice, I don't have to deal with the coworker BS drama anymore. It's great, but I'm lonely. And it kind of sucks, but I know this is better in some way. And yeah, that's just, I don't know if you two can relate to that, but.
I don't know if that's necessarily abnormal. I mean, I don't know what the exact statistic is for how long LADCs stay in a certain role.
Or X even, or anybody.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience with turnover, I don't necessarily think that it is very long. However, I do think that I don't necessarily fall into that statistic where I was at the same location for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Right.
That's special.
And
so I also think it's kind of, back to what you're talking about. I think as individuals in our journeys, there's also a piece of accountability to ourselves and our roles and how we are going to either bring change, provide structure. And I think that is an individual role as well as a community and systemic. I think that there's a lot of layers to that, and we each have a role in it.
That's some dimensional thinking there. I would concur.
Yeah. Anything to add, Robert? Or it seems like you're processing a lot right now in your head.
I couldn't say it any better. I think you should.
Okay.
That.
Yeah.
Yep. I think there's always things you can do to augment what you're doing. I found a side gig, right, where I get to go out and do something fun with the supervision credential, right? Which doesn't have anything to do with my business, but I get to go, have some camaraderie a little bit during the week without all the politics of being a full-time employee somewhere, right? And it's just enough. It's not full-time overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
And that works for me. And it took me a little time to figure that out. But first I did have to go through the process of recognizing I was lonely. And then I had to realize, okay, I got to do something about it, because I wasn't willing to go back to the way it used to be, because I like my freedom too much.
Were you ever thinking like part-time treatment center job, like a little bit? Not at all.
No way at this point. There's no way I could go back to having a boss.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Oh.
No way. No, not my.
So it's the boss thing. It's the treatment director boss thing for you, right?
It's at this point with my personality, I just couldn't. No, I couldn't. No,
Yeah.
sorry, no. It wouldn't be. It wouldn't be a good thing for either of us. I just couldn't do it. No.
I think it's important in this conversation, I think, for me to note that there is very much so a difference in structure between the 245G lay of the land and having, being a part of an organization. You have to have a certain structure. There has to be, within your policies and procedures and blah, 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 blah. But that structure also provides continuity of care among everyone's role, right? There has to be that structure.
Yep.
And that's not a downplay at all. However, on the flip side of it, I think for us in the private practice role, it allows us to bring in that really specific individualized approach that we didn't necessarily get to have. I'm sure anybody that has worked in a facility had a great idea at some point, right? Like, this is what this client needs. And then there's a whole bunch of barriers that are in the way, right?
Yep.
When you're talking about in that setting with the structure.
Yep.
And so I think that highlights a huge benefit of what we're doing, that it's not necessarily about all those other things, but very much so that ability that we have to have that freedom of creativity and thinking outside the box and really being individualized with providing what a client needs and not having any barriers along the way.
Yes, I would concur. And I think about this when I go out and I do audits, or I think about this in my own practice. When we sit and we talk about truly individualized care in private practice, we truly are free. We're not licensed programs, so DHS is not going to come in and audit us, right? So we are operating under statutes 148F, not 245G, and we're not going to be 1115 waivered, right? So 148F for reference, those are your statutes to follow. 245G only for documentation purposes. Mm-hmm. And what I would say about that is, yes, so think about that. So I can remember so many times as an LADC hearing the message, we need to be truly individualized. Clients need to tell you their goals. And then you'd want to, use a particular intervention, but that's not in the curriculum. Mm-hmm. So you can't. Well, what's the point then? That's not truly individualized, is it? Mm-hmm. So that we can do whatever the heck we want when we create that treatment plan, as long as we're doing it with the client, right? And the client goals should match our interventions, and they should all follow the golden thread. And if we're dually licensed, that's a whole nother level, right? Yeah. We can be blending the mental health interventions in there too, which we should be, and we can do the longer term work. So yes, I think it's a really unique opportunity. If you're doing it right, like me, everybody's treatment plan looks very different from each other.
Should,
right? There's no copy and paste. There's no cookie cutter BS, right? It's very uniquely different from each other. That's how it should be, if you ask me.
Can I go back to the professional side of things about like obviously directors and supervisors? Because Robert, we talked about this numerous times. Not everyone's meant to be in private practice. Not everyone makes a good private practice owner.
Yeah.
But going back to the treatment center settings, when it comes to an individual's career, if they're a counselor, therapist, whatever, they don't always make good managers. Like I've known owners who would hire their friends as directors and supervisors and this and that, and they are horrible directors and supervisors. But they're hiring them because they have that friendship connection, which is horrendous because your treatment center will never grow, or you're going to be blindsided by a lot of things. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that as a clinician, you need to know who you are and what you can do. And one, I don't know if you should hire your friends in general. That seems like a ethical issue too. Well, I know that is. And maybe, I don't know, I got some transference regarding this, but like, again, like I don't think any treatment program is going to be successful with a really bad supervisor or director. And you can't just, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is like not everyone makes good owners and not everyone makes good management.
It's naive to, anytime there's going to be a bias that might get in the way, right? It's naive to put somebody in a supervision role. The supervisor there is really there to help guide and develop the people they're supervising, right? They're there to act as a buffer between between HR and ownership or management or whatever, right? They're there to guide and support and develop the people they're supervising. They're not there to discipline and chase down and yell at and right. Now they can roll out corrective actions when needed, hopefully done in a trauma-informed and supportive way.
Which they don't.
Right?
Which they don't.
Well, some of us do. Thank you very much.
Right. I've told you my experiences, so we don't need to get into that. But yeah, I just have some trauma, some past work trauma that I'm trying to work out right now. But
yeah, but you should, yes. I mean, if you hire your friends, no, there has to be lines. Like, the supervisor has to be confident. First of all, they should have a good skill set. Like I was educated in all the models, right? In my master's degree for supervision, there are certain models we follow depending upon the situation, right? It's not just, I'm going to be a supervisor and I guess it's a little bit like parenting. So I guess I'll just behave that way. And there's policies. We follow the policies and procedures, not just organizational ones, right? But also our ethical codes that are bound to our licenses. Maybe we have multiple ones, so we have multiple codes we have to follow. And the people, whoever we're supervising, their ethical codes we have to look at, and the ethical models we have to look at, and the companies, like there's a lot that goes into it. And if you have a bias because you're friends with the HR lady, or you're friends with the client you're supervising, or you're friends with the owner, it's going to blind you and you're going to make a mistake, right? And that's what leads to trouble. So yeah, absolutely, it's not a good idea. No, it's not. Anytime you do something like that. That's my opinion. I'm going to just stay silent now.
You're right.
Yep.
Yeah,
what do you think?
I think all of that's accurate. I do feel as though there is very much so these cultural pieces that are deeply ingrained.
Toxic culture. Yes.
And I can say that I am very, very, very grateful to say that I've had excellent mentors in my career and supervisors that really, really molded me as a professional.
You are like the 5% or 3% in this field, by the way. Maybe I'm just being negative right now. No, but I'm happy for you. I'm glad you had that experience.
I know that because when I compare every sort of position I've ever had and every leader supervisor I ever had, of course there's a comparison. But in my professional roles, the supervisors and the mentors that I had were absolutely wonderful. And that really shaped me as a professional and as a leader, that I get to take a lot of that stuff and put it into practice for myself and see the benefits to the teams that I was a part of, and the feedback that I got. And that one is empowering, but it also, I think, shapes a different mindset that it doesn't have to be toxic. Yes. And that's a culture issue. And it's not, I don't think it's fair or appropriate to always say that it's, the supervisor or the teammate, or it really goes back, I think, to this culture that is really deeply ingrained.
What do you mean by that? It doesn't have to be that way, as in the sense that we should all have the awareness that maybe we all play some role in it and we should try to fix it or help it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I said like 5 minutes ago. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so let's say if you try to do that, but it doesn't work. Like, let's say if you're a counselor and let's just say your director is really toxic, the supervisor's toxic. How much can you really do? Obviously, you express your opinion, make them aware of your issues, but could or could that not do anything? It depends.
I have always, in conversations like this, I take the approach of the same thing that I would, and I think it's important as professionals that we are. What would you tell a client, right? We go back to our moral codes, our ethical codes, and the reality is we have to speak up for what is right. And at the end of the day, what somebody else chooses to do with that is their business. However, what are we going to do? And that, I think, is the takeaway, whether that's you, and of course, politely, professionally, respectfully, diplomatically, have the opportunity to share your piece, and whether that's going to be a conversation that can bring change and be open-ended and constructive for the right reasons in a positive way, that's what it's about. But if it can't, which does often happen in the world period, you have a choice. And what are you going to do with that?
And let me pivot it over to more of a lens of like LADC and private practice. All that I agree with, and let me add this element since this is going to come up for a lot of the audience. So, at first when I enrolled to do this, I still had my mental health hours to do, and I thought I had to do them I thought I had to do it in another clinic, right? So I was driving 2.5 hours away to do my mental health piece and then doing my private practice thing for just suds, until I figured out I didn't have to do that and I could just contract with the mental health supervisor. So what I ended up doing was I found a mental health supervisor. I think I posted something on Facebook and I just said, okay, but I knew I wanted a good one because one I was working with was, let's just say, it wasn't going well. And I don't think I'm that difficult of a person to be supervised, honestly. So do
you feel comfortable getting into some aspects of why it wasn't going well? Not too much into detail, but generally, were they not listening to you, or like?
It was more so we didn't see honesty. We had different definitions of what honesty was. Let's just put it that way. And
truth.
So it was ethical issues. And so as soon as I figured out I could just contract with a supervisor and that was legal and all this stuff, I posted them on Facebook. 2 people responded, 1 person I knew. And I knew right away. I had that instinct hit, right? And so and I, to this day, he's still supervising my mental health piece and I've been eligible to go take the test and actually have all the hours.
Are you done yet?
No, I just paid the fee yesterday. But I just realized the other day that I've purposely been not doing it because I'm attached. And that's what happens when you have a good supervisor.
Yeah.
The one, we were just talking about. That's how it should feel.
I still work with mine. I just bill it as consultation, but yeah, I still work with my mental health supervisor today.
And they should feel like they're developing you, and they should feel like you can trust them, even if you make a mistake, or even if it's a big mistake, or even if you do something that's out of ethical bounds. You should still feel like you can tell them, and you should, because they're there to help guide you back on track with as much minimal damage as possible, right? Mm-hmm. And they will try to help you, hopefully, protect your license, because we're all human, right? And because they will never, if a really good supervisor will never work with you in the first place if they don't think you're a good person. So, if you're if you're going into the private practice gig and you have your LADC and you're eligible to do this, and you're working on your mental health hours and you plan to contract like I did, make sure you seek someone out that has a positive psychology approach, knows their psychotherapy theories, knows how to build a case conceptualization with a theory, because that's kind of the gold standard. Keep telling treatment centers all the time, you need to build your theories in. And maybe quiz them a little, like, how do you if something egregious comes up, like, how would you handle that? How have you handled it in the past? Like, get a sense for it, right? And don't just sign on the dotted line because they have the credentials and they are able to supervise. Yeah. And fire them if it's not working out, and find somebody else until you have a good match, because they're the ones influencing you. They're the ones putting ideas and thoughts in your mind that could become beliefs. They're the ones shaping you, right?
Can I piggyback off that?
Yeah.
If you're working, let's say, at a treatment center, though, no, I fully agree with what you're saying. Let's say if your treatment center is paying for your supervision only because it's the mental health professional there might be incentive just to stay with a crappy supervisor because you're not paying for it. However, I like your idea. In the long run, you got to fire them, and I know that's hard. That's easier said than done. But you need to go to your treatment center owner and be like, hey, what's that?
Get your hours signed off for first.
But we need to realize the one point I wanted to bring up. There's this podcaster, psychology in Seattle. He did a great video on the process of supervision and the types of supervisors you have, where 15% of the great ones are inspirational. Like Robert, everything you said, they help you grow, they help you mature, they have a profound impact in your life. And then there's a middle chunk that's they're okay. They're not going to harm you, but they're not going to hurt you. And then there's the bottom 15% who are actually evil people in this field, who will try to emotionally harm you and get you out of this field. And what he's trying to say is it's very extremely important to know that so you can get out.
Yeah, you might not have experience to know that, but since this is private practice we're talking about, what I'm saying is if you're in a situation where you're working on your mental health piece and you're moving forward with this LADC thing, it is a good idea just to contract with a mental health supervisor so you can build mental health codes too, and you can do integrated assessments instead of just comps, because then reimbursement rate's a lot higher. And if you're smart, you will do a psychotherapy session as well as the treatment sessions. It'll bring in more revenue, right? Or you could even do, counseling session plus like a skills psychotherapy session every week, and do the group if you're doing groups. You could work a lot of ways with that model to bring in revenue, and maximize your revenue if you're able to build.
See, that's what you're good at. You're good at that kind of stuff. I'm not good at that kind of stuff.
You could be if you just ask me for the Excel spreadsheet that auto calculates all those things.
Ah, yes. Mikke, were you asking me about that, about a mental health supervisor? No.
Yeah, I was asking specifically just about what you're talking about with how to best capture both routes instead of, because I've been doing most of the stuff separate. So that is kind of the next endeavor that I'm moving into. Yeah. And I was going to say, I did want to add about the supervisor piece too. I think there's also a component as a professional knowing your learning style and keeping that on the forefront when you are, kind of interviewing and looking around. What is your learning style? What is it that you need? Because it's going to be kind of that match piece. And I think the greatest trait in the supervisors that I've had were their ability to challenge me, allow me to formulate my own thought processes, not give me answers, and to challenge me to view things through other lenses, which really gave me the opportunity to really grow myself.
Yeah, and I found with my current one, he's particularly grounded in a particular theory, which is attachment. And that's important. That was important for me to figure out early on, because then what I've done is I've taken advantage of that. And so I build my case conceptualizations, and I usually use attachment theory. I'm learning as much as I can from him about it because he's super smart with it, right? And that makes me strong in that area while I have him. I'll strengthen the other areas later, but while I have him during this short time, let me strengthen this thing I only read about in school. Absolutely. Right? So think about those things too. Because when you get out in the field, this is what I'm seeing when I'm doing audits. On the DAs, they're putting symptoms, presenting, they're putting a description of what the client's reporting for symptoms, behaviors. They're putting, then they're kind of almost copying and pasting what the symptoms are for the disorders from the DSM. And then they're kind of sort of making a wavy argument, but they're not putting the theory in. They're not building the case conceptualization all the way. Now, what they're doing is meeting minimum Medicaid standards. But I think we really lose something when we get away from building a whole conceptualization, right, based on a theory, and make our thesis and our argument in that document, right? So don't get away from that when you get out to these treatment centers if you're not there already, or if you are and you're just starting a mental health piece, go back to that, because I know if you're in grad school, you were taught how to do it right the first way. Don't fall for that, because it helps you think through better. Think through that. It helps you then think conceptually then, right?
Yeah.
And not get stuck in, I'm just going to do it this way every time because that's easier. You're not going to learn the disorders. They're not really going to conceptualize in your mind the same way if you do it that way over and over and over again. I don't know why I got off on it. I know why. Because these documents go out to your referents and your collaterals, and sometimes they read them, and that's going to help build your reputation too and your brand.
Absolutely.
And it's going to stand out more so than what they're seeing from these bigger programs.
Well, as we get into our new segment, we're going to get into the changes. Can we call it the LADC 2025 changes as it comes to policy, procedures, rates? And Robert, I guess I'll let you take control of that, since you know a lot more than I do about that. And Michael, you can add on to.
Right. Well, the good news is the good news and the bad news and the everything news.
No bad news. No, we've had too much bad news. No bad news.
Denial, and we're going to say bad news doesn't exist anymore.
Our bad news first, then the good news.
I mean, why not? Everybody else gets to live in denial.
Not just a river in Egypt.
Oh, I'm going to get a phone call later. Okay, so
give me something good. I want something good.
So there was a question. I mean, we were all wondering for a little while if we were also going to get the rate increase that's scheduled to, roll out for the 1115 waiver program. Well, everybody's going 1115 waiver, right? Everybody's required to. That's a licensed program. If you're listening and you're a licensed program 245G and you're not 1115 waivered, you're running out of time, right? So make sure you're on top of that. Good news is I'm seeing most places are when I go out to their sites. So the rate increases are going. For those of us that are enrolled as LADCs in solo private practice, we are also going to get that increase, the base rate, right? That's the good news. I was really worried we were going to be left out, because we're left out of the enhanced rates, right? For example, the enhanced rate for the cultural piece. If you're working mostly with people of color and you're culturally competent, and most of the work you're doing is culturally adaptive and it's in your documentation and you're in private practice, you should qualify for that rate, right? But we don't. It's not fair. Or those types of things, right? We get left out behind. So I was a little worried that we might get left out on the base rate piece, but we are going to get carried over with it. So that's the good news. Do you want to tell them what the rates are?
Great. Yes, I don't know because I don't have the sheet in front of me. Mike, do you have it?
I don't want to say it all. I feel like I'm talking to
individual, assessment, group, right? The basic ones.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have the numbers to say exactly what the differences are, but I can for sure share what they're going to be.
Wasn't it like 72? It was like $72 for individual. I know that.
No.
Before? I thought it was.
Oh yeah, 7211 before.
Like that.
So the new ones
drum roll
are treatment coordination is 1502. Individual is 8653.
Wow.
Group 4202. The other ones here apply to residential programs. So I think those are our big ones.
And I don't know yet about SBIRT or any of the other ones, or if that's even included. But yeah, those are the core ones. Now the work groups are working on going back to Medicare again and trying to get this increased further. But there's no guarantee of that. I wouldn't hold my breath.
Wait, how increase for what? Medicare?
Well, you have to understand. Just because the work groups here in Minnesota that are connected with DHS and MDH, all that do this work, once they make, all the research groups, when they do all this work, right? But they have to present it then to Medicare. the federal level, right? It has to get approved on the federal level. It's not because it's not that all the money comes from the state. A lot of it comes from the federal level too. And then if they approve it, then it gets trickled down to Medicare then to us, right? So it all starts on the Medicare level. People don't understand that a lot of times. So I wouldn't hold my breath, is what I'm trying to say. But they are trying. And maybe they get it. Maybe they won't. I don't know.
Those group rates are a game changer because let's be honest, like SUDs, like we make our money on groups. Let's just call it how it is. What was I gonna say though too? What was it? Was it like $32 before or something like that for group?
Yeah, let me look it up. It's about 30 something. I should have it up ready to go. Let's see.
But individual,
yeah, 30.
I'm assuming that's 31 minutes up. So 31 minutes or more, you're getting the 86. There's psychotherapy codes that don't pay that.
Yep. And I think it's fair because, I think let's say somebody comes in with just, I don't know, a mild form of depression. Somebody comes in for an hour of individual SUDS counseling and they're acutely intoxicated. Which rate should be higher? If you ask me, it just makes sense. It's kind of an upside down world. So
SUD should have a crisis code too, like psychotherapy. They should have like a 30-minute crisis code too.
Well, no, I want you to think about this. If you're dually licensed, or if you're at SUD, if you're able to build SUD codes and you're able to build psychotherapy codes either by yourself or under supervision, you could as depending upon how they're presenting, you could use a psychotherapy code instead and a crisis code, right? If it's a higher rate that day for that session. Mm-hmm. You don't always have to use the SUD code. So depending upon what's going on that day, if you're doing a on-demand session, if it's a crisis situation, you can mix and match the appropriate codes instead of using a SUD code, right? Okay. You got to think a little bit before you go in and put that CPT code in or start that note.
Mikke, you're smiling right now. What are you thinking of?
It's true. It's a whole different thought process and a way of thinking, and not being rigid. It's more about, what is presenting right now today, what am I working with, and how to capitalize on what's the best fit.
Yep. So with that in mind, what I would suggest is doing an integrated assessment instead of a comp.
Oh yeah.
Billing the 907, billing the DA with the TG modifier, which is extended DA. It's a higher rate anyways. That way you have an assessment on file that covers both the DA and the SUDS components, state, the Medicaid standards, and then open a treatment plan that's both mental health, covers mental health and SUDS. So if you go to open up a mental health, intervention that day or a SUDS intervention that day, it's covered either way. When you build that, you have that flexibility. I'm right? That's how I do it. And it matters if you're trying to if it's your living, and it's fair.
And it's beneficial to the treatment planning, right? That you have the ability to incorporate, back to what we're talking about with the creativity piece, the plethora of evidence-based practices and interventions that are relevant in certain areas. And you can really expand, your golden thread concept to really be individualized.
Yes. Yeah. So Jacob, if you went and did a mobile crisis intervention one night with one of your clients, I wouldn't build that under SUDS. I'd build that under some sort of other psychotherapy code. And maybe it's a couple-hour intervention. I'd be billing it under multiple codes, right? And get a much better rate for that intervention. Make sure you're using the right place of service code too. Versus
mobile crisis. What do you mean that? Like I'm driving to wherever the client is?
Right. If you went to intervene in person, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Remember, we're not a licensed program. We're not bound to a building.
Yeah.
Right. There's lots of things we can do that a licensed program is restricted from doing. Am I advocating everybody get in a car and start going and just no? But there are going to be situations. I mean, I've done it.
I also think on that note too, which brings down a whole other topic, is the variations among our licensure. And social work very much so allows for, built into our code of ethics to think like that and to operate that way. And I think that is also very different from a lot of the other, like your LPCC. There's going to be variations there.
So, know them, right? Yeah, know them.
Absolutely.
And I guess we've not really talked about this before in our previous podcasts, kind of more the mobile component. And I think it's easy to get rigid thinking about that if you're coming out of a licensed program.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between a licensed program rules and regulations and then private practice. So it's something to think about.
But you could also decide what you want to do when it comes to your practice, because some like private practice owners may want to decide, hey, I'm not going to talk to my clients past 6. I'll give them a card for crisis services, but that's just not what I'm choosing to do with you. So some may not feel comfortable ever going to a client's house at 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, and that's okay too.
It could be part of your informed consent, and then your answer service, whatever. And I'm just saying that as an example. When I was out at a different program, they're almost all mobile. They go to the client's home to do therapy, right?
Yeah.
And they're taking Medicaid. You could do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just go to their home and do the therapy, do family therapy. That could be several hours, right? So there's no rules saying you can't do that. You just have to make sure your paperwork's in order and your insurance covers it. That's important. If you have CPH insurance, it covers it. Mobile stuff is covered automatically. Yeah. And it's different than telehealth because you said you like to be in person. You're just not in your office, right? You're in their office instead. So I wish we had more of that actually in the field. I think that brings down another barrier. Mm-hmm. I was very impressed with this program actually, because that's pretty much their whole model is all their providers constantly throughout the day are going out to the clients' homes and doing therapy. Oh, wow. And that was their vision in the beginning. It's pretty impressive. And they had a whole host of mental health providers and had like 2 LADCs. I just was impressed. I thought that was great because you just don't see that very often. It's rare, and they had the mental health, the harm reduction philosophy, all of it. Yeah, we get
it's
stuck.
Great family.
We struggled with this whole okay, you're on probation, you don't have a license, but guys, dang, you better be here at 4 o'clock for treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And don't get caught, but we can't tell you not to try it. Okay, I better stop. I think it's
true.
Crazy right now.
Well, and the benefits, I think, for family to see families interacting in the home, such a crucial component.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, especially when you're thinking about attachment styles, where things could have been wrong, especially if you have a client that has a transactional relationship style. You can really see a lot. That might lead into maybe personality disorders later, getting to a diagnosis faster, and then what to do with that, right? That I agree with that. That makes a lot of sense. So with enrollment, I just want to say this real quick so we don't forget. If you're considering enrollment as an LADC in private practice, when I first started, it took about 6 months, but that was at the very beginning. They didn't have any guidance published.
Yes.
The first step is you have to enroll with provider enrollment, MA. That's the very first step before you can enroll with any of the PMAP insurance payers like Blue Cross, Hennepin Health, all of them, right? That application can be done either by paper. It's all posted, on DHS's website. If you just Google LADC in private practice individual provider enrollment, it'll come up. It's about halfway down the page, and Jacob will post the link later. And it's not just that application. Then there's a whole list of other documents you have to complete.
Yeah.
Or you can just do the online portal version. That I recommend, because then you can track the status. And the other reason I recommend it is because they have 30 days to complete, or at least review your enrollment online. And at 30 days, not 29 days.
Everything for them is 30 days. Everything in that
days,
damn department is it doesn't matter what it is, it's 30 days.
At 30 days, you can call in and call them on it, but not 29 days. And if they haven't processed it, they will look at it. But if it's 29 days, they'll tell you to call back in 30 days. And then just so you know, if you didn't complete something right, or at 30 days, or they need something different, they'll push it back and say, attach it. It might take another.
They'll wait 30 days, even though they knew within the first week, they'll wait 30 days. And you need to call them to find out. They won't ever reach out to you.
Right. Well, so sometimes they will. So I waited another 30 days. I went through this. So I uploaded an old tax.
It's because you faxed.
Document.
You faxed when you did it, right?
No, I did back then I did. This time last month I did a address update, waited a month. They kicked it back at 30 days, said wrong, old policy, update the new one. I attached it, sent it back, waited another 30 days. Nothing happened. Called last Friday. They said, well, you need to upload. We kicked it back and told you need to upload your current policy. And I said, I did. She's like, well, let me look. So she's looking at it and she says, oh, it is here. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and we'll just stay on the phone while I make sure this is right. And then she had a couple more questions about it. So they never even looked to see if I, but it got done. So you got to just make sure, like, you at 30 days, if it's not processed, call in and make them process.
What's their fucking problem? Can I just say that? What is their, if it's like there's one person working and that's it, and they're scrambling, or they're just pissing you off on purpose?
They got competent people there. It's just the system is old and it's just not very good at being proactive. It's more reactive, right? So if things can just hung up, you just got, if you follow those logical rules that I'm telling you, you'll be fine. So once that gets approved, you have to wait for the letter to come. It can come, come electronically through the portal, and then in mail, it'll give you your enrollment number. That's the key to everything. Once you have your MA enrollment number, you can apply for, you can start applying for the PMAPs. You're not guaranteed a PMAP plan unless you're in rural Minnesota. So, I mean, if your business address is in rural Minnesota, or if you have a home address and you're only going to do telehealth, or I don't know if you're in rural Minnesota and you're only going to do telehealth, if they're gonna say no in that case.
What counts as rural Minnesota? Like an hour north of the Twin Cities? What's the definition of that?
You're not in the TGA area. I'd have to look at a map.
Yeah. There's a map that breaks down.
Yeah. The other suggestion is, if you are dually licensed, if you're in the Twin Cities area, here's my suggestion for you, my hot tip for the day. Right now, there's a current law in place, and right now, unless they renew it at the end of the year, so this is only good for the rest of the year. It's only promising. That prevents the insurers in the state of Minnesota from saying no to mental health providers from getting contracts right now. So it's a state thing. It was just it was passed for this year. It has to be renewed next year by the legislature. So if you have a mental health license and you plan on being an LADC in private practice, my suggestion to you is, right now, apply for those contracts through your mental health license. And when you get those, then you're fine, because then you can just amend them with your LADC license versus applying first with the LADC license if you're in the Twin Cities, and then them denying it and say, oh, we have enough of those. Right? You do it backwards.
I thought it was the other, when we first were talking about this, didn't you tell me back in the day it was smart to get SUD contracts first and then the psychotherapy mental health contracts later? It would be easier transition.
But that was before this rule was in place.
Yeah.
So, and that was early on, before when this was brand new and they didn't have anybody. So, that's the thing about politics and the statutes and rules and laws. They change and they ebb and flow their living. So things change all the time. You got to take advantage of things when they come up, right? So that's how I would do it, is what I'm saying. If you're in the greater Minnesota area, your advantages are that you should probably be okay under most circumstances. If you're in the Twin Cities area, your greatest advantage is if you apply through the mental health lens first. And because once you have a contract, you have a contract. You can amend that thing for pretty much anything as long as you have the appropriate licensure, right? And then even if you're on shore, like let's say you're thinking, well, I probably want to do it maybe after the new year. Get the contract now anyways, because you can wait, but once that rule expires, if they don't renew it and you wait until after next year, insurance companies are notorious for saying no in the Twin Cities area for mental health contracts. Notorious. Yes. They always say we have enough providers.
Yes.
And that's why the rule was passed. But like I say, it's only good for right now. So that's my direction, or my thinking anyways, not direction.
Yeah.
I take no responsibility whatsoever for any of my advice. Do you have any thoughts about that? Like
sounds good. I didn't really have any issues.
Did you get all of them? Did you go for all of them, or just a few of them?
No, I got them all.
Did you play yourself?
Yeah.
Wow, good for you. I couldn't do that.
You didn't say telehealth only, did you? On your UCare one, or did you?
No.
Okay. So, yeah, you might run into the issue like Jacob did, at least for UCare, if we say telehealth only. I was telehealth only, but again, I was at the very beginning of COVID.
I was always wondering that. How did you get in?
Slewed me through, right?
Yeah.
Everything worked out for me exactly the way it needed. It was all divine timing for me. Like COVID, I had benefited from COVID while everybody else just got slaughtered. So, but I always took a positive approach to it all. I never let negative thinking influence me at all. And I think that is such an important lesson for life, because negative thoughts attract negative. The universe organizes your manifests your reality according to your thinking dominant thoughts, right? So it can be hard sometimes, but don't let it take you down.
Dare we? I know we're probably trying to wrap up soon. Dare we get into billing? Because I know it's for me it is. I don't want to put myself in this show, but Robert, I know you had some questions, and I'm leaving a billing company. Mike, I'm leaving a certain billing company, or should we probably save that for another day? However, it's very important. It's hard.
I can give you a few quick tips.
Because I'm not good. I was impressed that I lasted 4 months doing billing on my own with a clearinghouse. I was impressed. I don't have that brain. And here's my piece, and I'll let you two take it over. Some people may look at LADC. You're not making a lot of money. Nope. Do it yourself. It's financially not worth it for you to hire a billing company. I'm tending to disagree if they have a brain like mine, in a sense of, yeah, at the beginning you might not be making a lot of money, but you're saving yourself so much stress and anxiety of not putting in the codes the right way, or working with the insurance companies, where sometimes I feel like maybe it is helpful for your mental health to hire a billing company who knows what the F they are doing. Add that, who knows what they're doing, which again will benefit you in the long run. And sorry, I'm really triggered by this, but
we know. We can tell.
Mike's mom knows.
Okay.
I didn't mean to out you like that.
What do you think?
I have a leg up and a benefit. My mom is a biller. I have Arsenal in the closet, I can always lean on.
Does she do your billing?
No, but I ask all the questions, right? That goes back to me.
Here's what I've figured out. Your biller has to know how to bill SUDS codes with the right modifiers when appropriate, and the difference between SUDS codes and mental health codes and their modifiers. And they should have a sense of why you bill certain things a certain way. And you should use this. I've never had a problem using the CMS 1500 claim form. So that's the one I use instead of all the other ones that DHS says we can use. That's the one I use. Great. That's the one I have the NSYNC EMR system set to. I've never had a problem with it. It's simple. It's easy for the system to use. So that's what I use. your EMR, EHR, how easy does it make it to do billing yourself? Simple Practice was fine for billing, but the problem was the forms didn't integrate and data didn't flow. That was a problem for clinical charting. So InSync makes billing really easy, and it can automate a lot of that stuff. Like it'll auto-generate your claims, it'll auto-process your claims, all of it if you set it up right. But it's also expensive, right? It's like $500 a month just for my using my access and one supervisor, which actually at the end of the day, if you consider that it does all that and all the claims processing, kind of everything, the telehealth, the patient portal, maybe it's not so bad, right? Your system makes a difference, like whether you're going to hire a biller or not. Now, I have outsourced my contracting because that part drives me crazy. Making sure that your contracts are, your credentialing is always up to date, right? That got me into trouble this year because I wasn't paying attention to it. And the supervisor got dropped off one of my contracts. And so now I have claims sitting from January that haven't been paid yet because we're waiting for them to be re-credentialed back on again.
Join the club.
That part I have outsourced because I don't have time to be trying to figure out why these are being denied all of a sudden for mental health, what happened, filling out paperwork again to re-credential, all that stuff. So I've hired somebody just to keep track of when my credentialing is due, resubmit it, that part. But I'm still doing my own claims because it's not that hard in sync. But if you get super busy, though, you're probably going to want somebody else to do it.
So, Robert, when you're saying about the claims and the codes, fine. The billers actually have to be doing the job putting the claims through.
Yeah.
They have to physically put the claims through so you get paid.
Yeah.
These are people's livelihoods.
Yeah, I get it. Use Avality to see what's happening with the claims as it goes through the process for Blue Cross Blue Shield, right? Before you even see it in your system. So you can kind of get an earlier kind of heads up to what's going wrong. Use the UCare provider portal to see what's happening with claims as they're being processed before it even comes back to your biller, right? So you can kind of get a heads up what's going wrong. Use the provider portals, right? Yes, I heard you earlier. You want to just be able to just trust them that they take care of all of it.
Right.
But that's not, as a business owner, you kind of got to check on your people sometimes too, right. Even if you're contracting it out, because it could just be that they're thinking about it the wrong way and they need some guidance at first, right? Like they just need to understand that this is just a little bit more nuanced for SUDs, right? And these claims are getting dinged back because you forgot to put this one little modifier in and it has to be in here for SUDs, right? So there are ways you can look at these claims as they start pushing through the system and catch it soon enough that they can make the corrections right away and you don't end up with these huge delays in payment. Medicaid pays their payments within a week or within 2 to 3 weeks of the time you submit that claim. It's not like regular commercial plans where you have to wait a month or two. So you're right. It's a flag if you're waiting 3 to 4 weeks and you haven't had a payment.
Yeah. Can I compare it to like when you were hiring your accountant, when you hire them on, but you want to make sure they're doing a good job. You're on them. You're asking them questions. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what I did, obviously, with them. I look at the emails that I've sent them, and I feel kind of like an asshole. But it's like, no, I'm not an asshole. Things weren't happening, and I was like, what the hell is going on? Every day, week after week after week. I pretty much fired them 2-3 days ago, but I still haven't got email response from them yet.
I think it's also important. I mean, not in your case, but just for the sake of our conversation too. Contracts and making sure that you're reading your contracts and getting clarification on fine print. Those are important conversations.
You're right.
Interpretation, that perspective, and sometimes that means bringing in a lawyer if you're not comfortable, or having another set of eyes in that conversation, just to make sure that you're set up to be success and that your expectation is also clear. And clear both ways, not one-sided. Yes.
David Holt Law, specializes in our field. He is pricey, but he does do an initial consult for free. So when I first started, I got all my questions together and I fired them off in that free hour. And I got a lot of traction from that. You know what I mean? Especially when DHS hadn't posted any guidance yet. And if you ever got yourself in a really serious fire, he's probably the guy that can get you out, because he has a lot of contacts at DHS, and he is the person that knows our field.
Yeah.
So his website.
And I want to add, like, Micah, it also helps, with support. Like when I briefly met with your mom, and your mom had my back saying, like, yeah, you're in the right, they're fucked up. But then she used a bunch of like billing terminology that it was just too much for me. I'm like, oh, this is too much. But it's nice to again have that support saying, like, okay, you're in the right, like they're wrong. How do we fix this type thing?
Which I think just also taking it back to the importance of just our peer group and being able to lean on each other and brainstorm and, have those conversations, right? Because it goes back to that piece about having your community and being able to process those things. And I think that that's a huge benefit of also what we're doing, even in this platform, or, with our Robert's Facebook group, and who have you used for this, and what has your experience been for that? And really just the power behind that collaboration.
Yeah. I think it's important that you do know enough about claims that you can understand if somebody's competent, subject matter expert, competent, and that, I mean, that's what the whole point of your business is, to make money. So I think it's important that you do take a little time to learn of some of the terminology, and because how you ask questions could be part of this too. Like, if I'm not getting, I would be very specific. Like I would take every time I ask, if money wasn't coming in, I would take a claim from, like, I know Medicaid's not getting, it takes 2 weeks at most to get paid. I would take a claim from 2 weeks ago that I processed 2 weeks ago. I would open up an email. I would cite the claim number, when it was billed, when it was transmitted, and I would say specifically to the biller, what's the status of this claim, right? Did it make it to the clearinghouse and back? Was it denied, not denied? If it was denied, why was it denied? Right? Those are the kinds of things you have to do.
Yeah.
And then work your way through that way, instead of anything else, because they don't speak any other language. You got to kind of use their vocabulary. And so, you kind of do got to learn a little bit of the language. It's the same with accounting. Like, I found a great accountant, but I still had to learn a little bit of their language to get really solid answers.
Because you get taken advantage of. If you don't learn a little bit, you might get taken advantage of.
Yeah, or they just don't understand what you're saying because they have their own language.
Right. But then you're also just not informed enough to be able to make the decisions that are going to be best for you. And I think that's where that big piece comes into play, where what somebody else's interpretation of whether it's a question or your needs is just based on that. It's their perspective. If you don't have the ability to make that informed decision, it's not your decision, and you don't know if it's best for you.
Right. Or they might just be thinking you're being emotional that day. I get accused of that sometimes. I don't know why.
Great questions too. Just what is your process? Tell me what it is, a day in your shoes, with my account. What is your process? What does that look like for you? I mean, to give you a better understanding of how their perspective of what they're doing is. And then that allows you to have the opening of, okay, well, why do you do it that way when my understanding is it's supposed to happen this way? Or why are you saying this when I thought it was this? And also, then what is my role, right? Yeah. You're telling me this is your process and how you're doing it, but then is there clarity with what was my role in that? Because they could also be making assumptions that you're part of this process. And if you're not doing your part, they can't do theirs.
Yep. And 99% of the time, well said, 99% of the time, that's what's happening.
Yeah. And just like going back to like my situation, now that I'm moving on to like Equinox billing, one good thing I feel like I told myself is like Jake, you got to do a better job of asking questions, being assertive, and you need to understand about expectations. Like, what are your expectations for your biller, and what are their expectations of you? You can't go into this new situation with the same mindset, because it very well could just happen again. Things aren't just going to work out the way you want them to just because you want. So I need to do a better job, and I'm going to take more accountability for my actions of what I could do better throughout this process.
I think you just got some good guidance just now.
Well, can I speak about just now? Could there be someone, let's say next week, listening to this podcast who's thinking about doing private practice that might think like, oh my God, tracking claims 2 weeks ago? What's Robert thinking? That's crazy. I'm not going to do that. That person might not be good for private practice. If they're not willing to do those things, they might just like working in the treatment center setting and getting that paycheck every 2 weeks and not having to worry about getting paid.
Sure. Stay there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, stay there.
These are important aspects.
Those programs too. Yeah.
But it's a decision they're going to have to make. If they only like maybe a few aspects of private practice, that might not be enough to fully dive into it.
Right. Can I just comment real quick on who you choose to do your claims to? Because I ran into this at the beginning. Make absolutely sure whoever you choose to do your claim. I'm not talking to you specifically, Jacob. I'm talking to the audience. Make sure when you choose a biller that they understand SUD claims in Minnesota.
Yes.
I can't tell you how. So what happened with the first biller is, I really believe this is a group psych issue. They're so used to billing mental health that they had group beliefs about how that should be done. I went through 8 different people with this company and showed them through Zoom how to do on the claim screen, how to bill SUD codes with SUD modifiers. Do you think they remembered any of those 8? Nope. I almost went 3 months without a check once because of it. And that's when I fired them. And I couldn't, the only explanation I could come up with after going to that extreme of actually showing them how to do it, 8 different people, was the group belief was just too strong, right? It was wiping their memory of it every time. Then I had the conversation with Melanie, and I'm like, this has to be like a group psychological issue, right? Like at this point, I've showed all 8 of them how to do it several times.
That's
and do it for a little while, and then it's gone like I never showed them. And the only thing I can think of is I'm the only one they're doing that for, and then they go do the opposite way for 20 other places for the week, and then they forget it again, and then they come to me and they do it the way they do it for those 20 other places, and here we are again.
Is there kind of like an empathy piece, but not really because I'm getting screwed, but it makes sense that you do it like that way, but I don't know.
It just goes back to the differences. Like all of these companies, most of them are like across many states and many specialty areas. And Minnesota, I mean, as with all the states, they all have their own little nuances with modifiers and the difference between SUD or mental health or all the other different fields. And so it just brings back the specificity of finding somebody to utilize or a practice that's aware or maybe even centered in Minnesota that has that experience with this field, the modifiers we use, and specific to Minnesota.
Right. And they're not doing mass billing for they're dominant in this one area that is not yours. Because that's what happened. There's this confirmation bias piece happening, right? And it was just causing me, it took me almost 3 months to figure out what was going on. And then when I finally figured it out, I was so enraged, I fired them.
Well, I heard there's a common stereotype that I learned from like my new billing company is that a lot of billing companies, they only really want to help the big companies because they make them the most money. Small places like me, they don't put a lot of effort into helping out and doing the claim. So she's like, when I see you, that's not uncommon. She had a woman who was making $200,000 a year in private practice, and she wasn't getting paid for 3 months, like you, Robert. 3 months and not getting paid. These billers need to understand you're ruining lives in a sense. If you don't, what would happen if you didn't get paid for 3 months? No rent, no insurance. I mean, God knows what. It's horrible.
Well, I think we've given you our direction and advice. I think it's solid. I think it just got to find somebody who cares and that knows their stuff, and maybe somebody smaller, that knows behavioral health and that's all.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And check the work a little bit once in a while. Go into claims and just take a look. Go to the provider portal, take a look. It only takes you a few seconds. Really. Not hard.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think it would do everybody a little bit of good just to learn the basics of claims, what a CMS 1500 form is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't really need to use the telehealth modifier for Medicaid anymore. I learned that recently, and it was causing some issues with health partners claims, actually. Just make sure your place of service is correct.
Yes.
And you're good.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, any final thoughts before we wrap this up, everyone?
We touched on so many pieces.
I
think wrap up. My key takeaways that come to mind for me are just the importance of your people and collaboration, and also in this process, just kind of like the things you're pointing out with the learning curves along the way. It's inevitable and part of the process. You know, we could have all talked and compared the steps that we took, and there still would have been hurdles and different detours.
Yep.
And that's kind of the beauty of learning along the way.
Yeah.
And when it comes to other providers and softwares and the services that you're utilizing, it's so important to make sure that they're Minnesota specific. And I think even outside of the billing piece, that's been important even for the EHR or your EMR and whatever system you want to use. It's so important to narrow in on those specifics to avoid plethoras of problems and headaches.
Amen. Well, as we wrap things up, Mikke, you being a first returning guest, if any of the audience members want to get a hold of you or message you or email you, is there a website or email they could use to make contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Do we want to post it or?
Yeah, I'll post it if you just want to give a shout out to what your email address is or your website or.
Yeah. So my website I can be reached at is www.empowermeinc. So it's MPOWERMEINC.com.
What made you create that name? Because that's an awesome name, by the way.
Oh boy, so a long road of name picking and just really encompassing, I think, the goal of what I want to do as a clinician in private practice is just empowerment and building people up. And that really applies to not only the clients I work with, but the professionals. And went with the M to really connect it to my name, Mikke, and personalize it for myself. Yeah, that's where they came from.
Very beautiful. Nice. Robert, your contact information?
Probably website's easier to give right here, so they'll do that too. So www.soul, SOUL, savvy, SAVVY.biz.
Excellent. And again, to all my audience members, that will all be in a link in the show notes. So it'll be one click away. So again, thank you so much, you two. I had a blast.
It was fun.
It was fun, yeah.
Till next time.
Till next time.
I again want to give a huge and amazing thanks to Robert and Mikke for being awesome and amazing special guests on my show. They did a phenomenal job, and I cannot wait to have them on again in the future. I just want to thank all of my listeners for your support, and just to inform everyone that the information expressed in this episode was not meant to be taken as therapeutic advice. If you do find yourself struggling with any type of mental health or addiction issues, please seek the care of a medical doctor or a licensed mental health therapist. And if anyone has any further questions for me, you can reach me at my email address, behaviorhealthintegration121@gmail.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn at Jacob Minig, where you will find more educational posts on psychotherapy, trauma, and addiction. And finally, you can follow me on my website, which is behaviorhealthintegration.org. I also want to inform everyone that there is a great new device out there called CalmiGo. It's a breathing device meant to control and manage your breathing rates and the depth of your breathing as you inhale and exhale to, again, help relieve any type of anxiety and stress-like symptoms. And if you do put the BHI podcast into the promo code, you get $30 off this amazing device. It is a once in a lifetime deal and you will not be disappointed. All right, everyone, until next time, have a good day. Bye.